Hello and welcome to another fabulous podcast series, Meet the Tech Titans, which is brought to you by Hutch. It's a thought leadership podcast series. We're speaking to influential voices in the technological industry and the digital world in Sri Lanka. Individuals who actually stand shoulder to shoulder with some of the biggest names around the world, who've actually built companies which also stand shoulder to shoulder with some of the biggest companies around the world right here in Sri Lanka. It's an 8-part podcast series. Like I said, we've got so many different fantastic individuals who've actually made a name for themselves in the industry, coming just to basically share some insights, share some thoughts about their industry and their expertise in the world of technology. Now, of course, we've got a very interesting individual on the show with us, Shevan Goonatilleke. And firstly, Shevan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Sure, thanks for inviting me.
Shevan, of course, is the CEO of MillenniumIT ESP, and of course, a big name in the technological industry in Sri Lanka. Shevan, now you obviously have been a key player in different industries over the last few years. I mean, software, telecommunication. Now, would you feel that you've actually found your soft spot with MIT at the moment?
Well, it was a different experience, to be honest. Having started as an engineer in software and then gone into telecoms and doing various jobs from software engineering to project management to and now this is basically running a company, right? I'm running a company in an industry that is relatively new to me, because you're talking about the ICT space now.
Right.
When you take technology as, we had the software space, you have the telecom space and different spaces. So ICT was something relatively new to me.
Right.
Very interesting because it's a breadth of technologies that you're working with now.
And you're also looking at different engineers actually working on different projects at the same time.
That's right. I mean, multiple projects in multiple sectors as well. Right, so I think multiple technology areas covering, the infrastructure piece, the software piece, the application piece, the support piece, and so on.
This is more in enterprise, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
So, in terms of enterprise technological industries right now, what, as of now, would be the challenges that you're actually facing?
Well, I think technology, as you know, evolves very fast.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think in countries like Sri Lanka, we've had a lot of challenges where technology adoption, in some ways, it's a bit faster than it was earlier, but traditionally has been a bit slow. There are some new technologies when you're talking about cyber security to cloud adoption to AI, ML, type of technologies where enterprises really want to get into these things, but there's in some ways there's a lack of knowledge on it, lack of skills, and so on. And then those have been challenges in terms of for them justifying the cost involved.
Right.
Although they see benefit in it. Right. So those have been some key challenges that we have to deal with as well.
So also, Shevan, you must be dealing with, especially in Sri Lanka, we have a fair amount of legacy-driven businesses and also, as a matter of fact, holding on to legacy-driven systems.
Yeah.
And trying to move into the current world can actually also be challenging. Mm-hmm. And I think COVID played a huge role in sort of fast-tracking them to actually get there. In terms of trying to basically move legacy systems that are used by these companies to what is available today, how hard is it for you to sort of penetrate that market?
It's a journey. There are some companies, enterprises, banks who are more progressive than others.
That's right.
Right, and it comes down to, I think, a couple of things. One is obviously budget availability.
Right.
Other thing is the leadership. Right, how progressive are they? How do they see technology being part of the future of their enterprise? Right. So honestly, it's more towards. I think Sri Lanka is still getting there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think there are a few companies, banks that are much more progressive. It's much more easier to work with and progress, and it's enjoyable as well because they understand, they really know what they want,
right,
and so on. But it's a journey, right? It's going to take a few years before you can see that wide scale adoption.
Is there a terminology in terms of basically adopting traditional technology? Are there companies still holding on to traditional technology?
There are. Mainly because they don't want to. There is some level of resistance to change when it comes to some of these things. One thing is, and there's a quite a cost involved as well, right? Changing from your legacy systems, your mainframe computers to, and suddenly moving to the cloud. It's a mindset change. Some of your staff may be, stuck in the in the
medieval era.
Exactly. So these are challenges that people face. But again, some of the more progressive companies have managed to overcome that.
Now, adapting cloud technology is what we want to get into. Cloud computing really has become the backbone of modern digital transformation today in the world, wherever you go, especially in the post-pandemic world where we obviously look at it as being absolutely crucial. What trends do you foresee in the future as far as cloud services are concerned, especially coming from an enterprise-driven organization?
Sure. So I think cloud adoption is catching on in Sri Lanka. I think one thing we are starting to see is going to this concept of hybrid clouds.
Right.
People are not being reliant on one cloud provider, because
Okay.
you have there are multiple cloud providers, some of the tech giants with their own cloud systems in place. Enterprises are starting to get into more hybrid clouds because they can then avoid vendor lock-in.
Right.
Because if they feel that they are locked into one particular vendor.
Right.
Because cloud is one thing. The dangers of cloud also is, there's always the perception that you don't need your physical hardware. It's going to be cheaper and so on. Yes, in a way, but it has to be managed. If it's managed properly, because you're talking about OPEX cost now instead of heavy CAPEX that you're investing into hardware and all that, right? But how the cloud works is it's based on consumption.
Right.
And if you are not managing it properly, without you knowing it, your consumption can just drive up, and your cost, you'll suddenly get a massive bill on it if it's not managed properly. Right, so that's where people need to be very cautious about that as well.
So what advice would you actually give to companies who are looking to scale their operations using cloud technology while ensuring they have robust security? Because that is also a huge issue that people obviously have, because nothing is impenetrable, so to say.
Yeah.
And security is a big concern, especially with legacy systems and companies that obviously have like traditional way of doing business.
Yeah. So the security landscape also is evolving, right? I think the level of threats that are coming, the sophistication of the attacks that are coming through, it's getting more sophisticated by the day.
Right.
Right. So there has to be a set of people or teams who are always aware of what's new, what's happening out there, right, and be able to deal with those situations now, right? So that's where any enterprises they have the challenge of not having their own resources or their own people, right, to be able to with the knowledge, the skills and so on, to deal with it. Sri Lanka has we've gone through a brain drain, so to speak. Right?
I think we're still going through it.
We're still going through it as reduced in pace, but still going through that. But I know with all that, I think these enterprises being able to manage their own security landscape has been a challenge. And that's where they start relying on partners. Then they start relying on especially if their systems are moving to the cloud. Right, then some of the latest security technologies are also built into those clouds.
Right.
They don't need to think about having various pieces now, stitched in.
Right.
Right. So
the cyber security is obviously, yes, it is a buzzword.
Yeah.
Cyber security is such a huge word, even though we basically throw it around like it's like it doesn't really matter. But with, like you just said, the threats of cyber security as technological devices, or even technology advances, so does the threats.
Yeah.
And in terms of businesses, how can businesses actually prioritize cybersecurity amidst increasing threats, but ensuring the fact that the innovation is still there?
Yeah.
Because it's given, Shevan, the more you push the needle, the more onto a dangerous sort of environment you sort of come into, like unplanned territory.
Sure.
So how do businesses sort of prioritize that?
Yeah. And you said it right. And as I said earlier, also the sophistication of these threats is just getting more sophisticated by the day. So I think one thing that the world is adopting now is this concept of zero trust.
Right.
Trust no one.
Trust no one.
Right? Because I think when we start talking about cybersecurity threats, we always think about external attacks
Right.
into enterprises, right? But there are a lot of examples where the attacks have started from within.
Right.
Right. So this is why the technologies that also are now adapting to this concept of zero trust technologies, where you basically go on the concept of trust no one, verify. Right. So your internal, your employees, your teams, obviously it can, it has a cultural impact as well, right?
Yes, of course.
So, but this is where the threats of cybersecurity are now being discussed at board levels, and then there's a mandate from a CEO level, senior management, legal, HR teams getting involved, because it impacts everyone, right? And a serious cyber attack can bring down a business.
Of course.
It can, people's jobs are at stake, right? So that there's a responsibility for them as well then, to make sure that the threats are managed and they are secure, right? So that's where it's a topic that needs to get discussed as a company, taking like a security first kind of a stance, even as an employee.
Right.
Right. So that's where I think the knowledge, the mandate, the sponsorship has to come from board level, senior management, HR people, all of them.
But companies don't necessarily take cybersecurity too seriously till they actually get attacked, right?
That's right.
Why is that?
Because one thing is, everyone thinks that they are secure. Right?
Yeah.
No one is going to come and we are a small company, they'll think we are a medium-sized company. There are so many large companies in the world out there, they'll attack them. Why us?
Right.
So that is one thing. And obviously, protection is, again, it's not cheap, right? You need to have the systems in place, you need to have the people in place, you need to have the operational environment in place to protect yourself. And obviously the investments don't happen until something goes wrong, right? We see this even in houses, right? When you get burgled, you start thinking about the security.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It's a very similar thing. So so I think for those reasons, I think this is where some of the companies that are really worrying about security start focusing and putting their systems and investments in place, assuming that it's imminent.
Right.
Threat attack is going to be imminent, right? How do we recover at this point? We protect ourselves as much as possible, but we also need to think about recovery. If we are attacked in some way, how do we recover? Get back to our business, make sure employees are secure, right? Financials are secure, and so on.
But in the world of technology, correct me if I'm wrong, anything that can be built can be unbuilt. So it's not necessarily secure 100%.
Yeah, so I think as with everything, I think you just have to do the best you can.
Right.
Best you can. We've seen some large security attacks happen across the world in some of the largest enterprises, right? You'll never think of. You think they have all the secure mechanisms in place, but they yet been attacked. Right, and we go through this because we have this thing called the Security Operations Center, right, where we monitor our customers' environments, right? Where we monitor their events, we monitor their network activity, we see threats coming in, right? But then they have their security mechanism in place which are blocking those, right? But you'll be amazed to see the level of threats that keep coming in to any enterprise.
Right. Okay.
Any of our enterprises, always there is someone trying to penetrate in some way, right? So I think it's just imminent. You just have to make sure it's protected.
So it pretty much keeps you guys on your toes all the time.
Yeah. So that's so for that reason, that is a very key business that we've been skilling our people in as well now, skilling and training people, because that's a growing area and enterprises demand that now.